Please keep yourself on mute and your camera off during the presentation. We will use the chat feature to interact during the presentation. I have several question prompts throughout the presentation. At the end of the meeting, we will have some time for questions and additional discussion. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Anderson, Urban Ecology Supervisor with Denver Parks and Recreation. As we get started, I'd like to invite everyone to share in the chat your favorite thing about Sloan's Lake. Perhaps you like walking around the loop trail around the lake or bird watching. Maybe you have done a sunset paddle on the lake. Let us know why you think Sloan's is Denver's premier lake. While the chats are rolling in, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce Councilwoman Sandoval. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to say a few words about the importance of Sloan's Lake for you?
Hi, thank you so much. So Sloan's Lake is near and dear to my heart as someone who grew up on the north side, and I have lots of memories. And this study and this work is super important to create the foundation for the next steps of the health of the lake. So thank you for participating. And I have one ask of all of you who are on Zoom. If you tell 5 of your friends, and 5 of your friends tell 5 of your friends, and 5 of your friends tell 5 of their friends, that's how we grow, and that's how we grow a movement. And we need all of your participation to make sure that we have the best assessment for the lake possible. So after this, they'll post this to the website. And if anyone has questions, feel free to please reach out to Parks or Rec or my office. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for allowing me to talk. Have a good evening, and I'll be here.
Thank you. I see lots of chats rolling in, so thank you for all these kind words about the lake, the pelicans, the people, the environment, the sunsets, watching fireworks. Keep them rolling in. Our agenda for this evening, we will introduce the Lake Environmental Assessment Project scope, the goals, and the consultant team. We will share a brief update on other projects around the park. Then I'll discuss previous planning efforts for the lake and share existing conditions report from our consultant team. And then we'll close with next steps and open discussion. Sloan's Lake Environmental Assessment is a high-level planning process to create a data-driven mini vision plan to guide the ecology, engineering, design, and construction to restore the lake to a resilient ecosystem. The current phase of this project includes 4 primary goals. Please write into the chat what you think is the most important factor for you in the future of Sloan's Lake. The 4 goals are improving water quality, maintaining stormwater detention and flood capacity, ensuring a sustainable recreation amenity for human use, and to create a resilient urban ecosystem for all types of wildlife. So let us know in the chat what you think is most important. I see recreation, I see water quality, urban ecosystem, a mix of everything. They are inseparable. They all go hand in hand. That's a great comment. Wildlife, focus on biodiversity. Excellent. Please keep sharing. So the project scope, we have our consultant team that consists of Pinion Environmental for ecology and landscape architecture, along with Matrix Design Group on the engineering scope. The project has 4 main tasks, which include water quality monitoring and data collection, sediment characterization, lake restoration planning. So the next step in this process will be 3 initial restoration concept alternatives, and then 1 final concept plan. So first, I'd like to call out Sydney and Jeremy from Pinion are on the call. Drew with Matrix is also on the call with us tonight. We have our project partners, which I'll introduce a little bit later, also on the call. As a reminder, this environmental assessment is looking specifically at the lake and the surrounding shoreline. So the purple dashed line you see on this graphic is the approximate boundary of this scope. We're not looking at the park holistically, we're looking primarily at the lake. Denver Parks and Recreation uses a system called landscape typology to assess our different landscape types within park spaces. At Sloan's Lake, the landscape typologies within the environmental assessment are primarily our wetlands, riparian zones, the water itself, and some of our adjacent upland native areas. The wetlands always have surface water over plant roots. Riparian areas, the roots of the plants touch groundwater, but they don't have surface water. So that's the difference between riparian and wetland. In some areas of Sloan's Lake, bluegrass lawn is located adjacent to the shoreline. So in areas that should be wetlands or should be riparian landscapes. So we will use the landscape typology information to help us assess the surrounding landscapes around the lake. In some areas, we may look at transforming and transitioning some of those bluegrass spaces to more native landscapes to act as buffers around the lake. So in some areas, we may remove bluegrass to make room for native landscapes. We may restore some of our upland native landscapes as well. So other projects around the lake, many of you are probably already aware that there is quite a bit happening at Sloan's Lake. First of all, currently under construction, Sloan's Lake Park South Playground, picnic area, and tennis courts. This should be completed around mid-July. The pickleball courts at this location have been put on hold as we explore alternative location options. ADA improvements were made at the picnic areas by the Sloan's Lake Boathouse in 2021. The Sloan's Lake Boardwalk replacement was completed in late 2022. The Pelican Fountain was repaired and is now functional and operates from our irrigation system and will run approximately from mid-May through mid-September annually. The Sloan's Lake North tennis courts and basketball courts will be renovated with funds from the RISE bond. Design will begin later this year with a goal of completing the project in 2025. Design of the Sloan's Lake Gun Club in the southwest corner of the site will also begin this year. This project will retain the historic features of the gun club while bringing the facility up to modern building code to serve as the Northwest Parks maintenance facility. The current maintenance team is in the boathouse and will relocate to this facility. And the area around the gun club will be redesigned with a shop and separate parking areas for DPR vehicles. Additionally, the broader area around the gun club, to include the basketball court and the submarine memorial, will go through a vision planning process to develop a better concept for the recreational opportunities at this corner of the park. The Sloan's Lake Boathouse will also undergo a redesign effort in the next few years. The RISE bond also secured funds for this building to be restored and transformed into a community space that will include a large indoor area for rentals and programs. If you have any questions about any of these projects, feel free to put them in the chat and I will address everything I can at the end of the meeting. So previous planning efforts. We all know that Sloan's Lake is a beloved regional asset in Northwest Denver that is in need of environmental improvements to remain a resilient ecosystem and recreational amenity. This isn't a new concern. It has been a topic of concern for many years. So I'd like to touch on a few previous planning efforts that relate directly to this environmental assessment. First is our game plan for a healthy city. Everything Denver Parks and Rec does looks to our 4 guiding principles: every drop, every person, every dollar, and uniquely Denver. Of the 25 key priority strategies from the game plan, the Sloan's Lake Environmental Assessment is focused on at least 8 of these priorities, including resilient landscapes, ecosystem restoration, recreation programming, equitable access, nature in the city, among others. Sloan's Lake had a previous master planning effort from 2002 that identified a goal to restore the lake to health as a recreational facility and a wildlife sanctuary. Key goals from this plan were to transform landscapes along the shoreline and along Sheridan Boulevard to enhance water quality and wildlife habitat. Denver Parks also recently completed the Outdoor Adventure and Alternative Sports Master Plan. This plan will increase participation of diverse outdoor adventurers. Denver Parks will provide a variety of outdoor opportunities for families and people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. What this means for Sloan's Lake is that this lake should become a water-based activity hub with a priority for hand-powered craft and opportunities for equipment sharing, such as stand-up paddle boards or kayaks or paddle boats, as well as environmental education. So please share in the chat again, what type of recreation do you do at the lake or would like to see at the lake? Someone mentions they'd like to swim in Sloan's Lake. What else would you like to see? Paddling, bird watching. These are great comments. Keep them coming. Bike riding on the path, bird watching, swimming, balance of wildlife and geese, very much noted. Sailing, kite surfing, excellent. I want to touch on Sloan's Lake maintenance. Denver Parks now has a full-time lake management team to address Sloan's and other lakes across our park system. Some of you may remember last year in 2022, this team applied 2 applications of a Phoslock treatment. This product helps bind phosphorus in the lake and holds it so that it is not available to blue-green algae. This treatment was successful at significantly reducing algae in the lake throughout the summer of 2022. The lake management team will also visit the lake at least twice weekly to visually inspect the lake, take water samples, remove debris, and address other issues that arise. In early June this year, the lake management team will again treat the lake with a new product called Utrafix. This product is very similar to the Phoslock treatment used last year and is expected to achieve similar results. There is a second treatment planned for later in the summer. So our existing conditions report. The existing conditions data will inform the project partner's decision-making and will guide the development of concept alternatives for the future of the lake. The project partners and stakeholders currently include Denver Parks and Recreation leading this planning effort, along with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, Department of Public Health and Environment to assist with water quality, the Mile High Flood District, the Regional Stormwater and Flood Control Authority, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who had previously stocked the lake with fish, especially Councilwoman Sandoval for her tireless advocacy of Sloan's Lake Park, our nonprofit partners, the Sloan's Lake Park Foundation. I know several of you are on the call tonight. Other registered neighborhood organizations and interested residents on our stakeholder advisory group, Denver Park Trust, and everyone here tonight. So before I go into existing conditions, I want to touch briefly on the history of what is now Sloan's Lake. Historically was used by the Sioux, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Kiowa tribes. So I'd like to take a moment to honor and acknowledge those who steward this land throughout generations. We have all heard the legends surrounding Sloan's Lake. An important thing to remember is that Sloan's Lake is not a natural lake. Therefore, it does not always function like a lake. We can't necessarily plan for restoration thinking this is a natural lake. So the history is that Farmer Sloan is said to have flooded the site around 1862. During the late 1800s to the early 1900s, Sloan's Lake you know today was actually two separate lakes. Sloan's Lake and Cooper's Lake. Over time, the two lakes have merged, creating the island in between Sloan's Lake proper and from the eastern end of the lake that we now call Cooper's Bay. So let's talk about data. Over the next few slides, I'll share a series of maps that will help explain the challenges and opportunities related to lake restoration. First, I want to zoom out to the Sloan's Lake watershed, which you can see on this image. A watershed is the area of land that surface flows to a single stream system. In this case, we're looking at Sloan's Lake and the Sloan's Lake Drainage Way, which flows to the South Platte River. The watershed covers portions of Denver, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Edgewater, and unincorporated Jefferson County. If you live in this area and you wash your car in your driveway, that water will eventually flow to Sloan's Lake. If you use fertilizer on your lawn, the excess nutrients, especially phosphorus, in that fertilizer will eventually drain into Sloan's Lake. So please remember that when we are talking about water, it is all connected. This entire area affects Sloan's Lake. We can't solve this problem without looking holistically. So the next map is of the lake and park to show our water resources. Sloan's Lake is the Sloan's Lake typical water surface elevation is at 5310.3. So that's over a mile above sea level. The state capital is at 5280. The 100-year flood water surface elevation is 53,112. So 2 feet above the assumed normal water surface line is our flood capacity. That's the red dashed line you see in this image. So our flood capacity and stormwater capacity does not go much outside of the boundaries of the lake. This project is not intended to increase the lake holding capacity for stormwater or floodwater. The goal is to maintain the existing capacity. On this map, the lighter beige lines that you can see indicate the approximate historic lake boundaries from the late 1800s and early 1900s. So you can see how that outline has shifted over time. The blue colors on the map indicate the water depth. So the darkest shade is the deepest area, with the lighter blues being shallower areas. The lake currently receives water from multiple sources, including stormwater and ditch water. Denver Parks and Recreation has water rights from the Rocky Mountain Ditch, which enters the lake through Sloan's Lake Drainage Way channel at the southwest corner. Additionally, there are about 24 stormwater inlets that outfall into this lake, shown on this map with the purple arrows. The lake outlet, so as I mentioned, the lake is connected to the South Platte River. So the outlet at the southeast corner near 17th and Newton is where the water discharges and flows down to the lake. This map also indicates our 2 water quality monitors. The asterisks in the plan show one in the center of Sloan's Lake and one in the center of Cooper's Bay. This next map shows our water quality information. So first, you will notice the dark brown colors in the lake. This relates to the approximate sediment depths in the lake. The darkest colors are the thickest layers, the lighter colors are thinner layers. As I mentioned in the previous slide, there are about 24 stormwater outfalls into the lake, but there is only one water quality facility directly in the lake, near the boardwalk and the Pelican. There are 2 smaller water quality facilities near the northwest parking lots. So runoff from the parking lots does get treated in our stormwater systems there before it enters the lake. The new southern playground will have a rain garden feature that will also treat some of the stormwater runoff entering the lake. So as we make upgrades around the site, water quality features may be added and upgraded to better treat stormwater going into the lake. As I mentioned, our 2 in-lake water quality monitors were installed in the summer of 2021 as a temporary test. In 2022, in May, we installed them for the last year. We now have about 1 year, full year of data collection. These monitors were left in the lake over the winter and generally were able to function below the ice. However, since the monitors were not routinely maintained over the winter, some of the data points may not be accurate. So we are still adjusting the data to understand those patterns. So for example, the graph I'm showing is temperature. As you can expect, it's warmer in the summer, cooler in the winter. The intent is to use this data to help us understand targets for ecosystem restoration. So in terms of freshwater fish, what is the target temperatures within our lake? The red lines are an approximation of what that goal might be. We know that the lake gets very hot in certain times of the summer. So in order to maintain quality fish habitat, we need to make sure we're keeping the lake at appropriate temperatures. The water quality monitors also monitor temperature, pH, total dissolved solids, dissolved oxygen, and chlorophyll A. So the chlorophyll A is the measure of blue-green algae in the lake that helps us understand where their algae growth over the year. The next 2 maps indicate the ecological inventory. This map is intended to help guide decisions on landscape improvements outside the lake. As I mentioned earlier, we will be looking at areas to transform the park based on our landscape typology data. We will look at areas to improve native vegetation, enhance habitat, and reduce irrigation water usage. The concept alternatives will show some areas of potential wetland and riparian expansion along shorelines, as well as areas for potential conversion of high water use bluegrass to native landscapes. The ideal landscape condition is to create a 50-foot wide native landscape buffer around the lake. In some areas, this may not be possible due to the trail location and existing park amenities. So the concept alternatives will look at options to make improvements balanced with human use and lake restoration. This ecology map shows the shoreline edge conditions. This lake has a little bit of everything from fully armored concrete edges to rock to sand beach to natural wetlands. This map also includes the tree inventory throughout the park to help inform where tree canopy can be expanded or diversified based on the landscape typology categories. For example, maybe we need to add more willows and cottonwoods along the shoreline to add shade for fish habitat. Maybe we need to add more trees around picnic areas or parking lots to shade human use. So the next steps, our next public meeting will have our 3 concept alternatives. Over the next month plus, we will be developing internally our concept alternatives based on some feedback from you tonight. We will also be issuing a community survey that you can provide additional feedback. Our next public meeting is tentatively scheduled for July, and then our final plan target is tentatively for September. Once we have that final plan, that will help the city and our project partners understand what our funding opportunities are. So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion. Please use the raise hand feature and we can have some questions. I'll look back through the chat and answer some questions as well. Okay, Paul, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I mentioned this in the chat box. Has there been any consideration about adding another put-in? Because a lot of people who live on the south side of the lake now are paddle boarding and viewing access. And with the submerged rock, it's really dangerous. So I'm wondering, because if we don't do that, people are going to do it anyway. And that's going to lead to an untenable situation. So I'm wondering if there's been any conversation about that. Thank you.
Great question. Yes, that is perfect feedback for this point. We don't have any plans for the lake yet. We're still, as I mentioned, we're still starting up design of those concept alternatives. So those recreation drop-in points could be considered with this. As I mentioned, through the outdoor adventure alternative sports master plan, this lake should be a priority for that drop-in access. So adding a second access point on the south side of the lake is a really good recommendation. Tony, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering I believe there may have been a connection between the Congress Park pickleball courts being paused and the Sloan's Lake pickleball courts being paused. But I'm wondering, specific to Sloan's Lake, what process needs to go in place to evaluate whether or not pickleball is probable to install, and what does that timeline look like?
Well, I see Scott Gilmore is on the call, so I'm going to defer this question to him since it's outside of the environmental assessment.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Great presentation. I knew that there might be some questions related to the park in general, so wanted to join in and participate. Thank you, everyone, for joining this meeting and providing your input. I'm Scott Gilmore. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of Denver Parks and Recreation. On the pickleball issue, you know, we're really trying to learn about pickleball, and we're trying to figure out the best ways to provide courts that pickleballers can play on. The courts that we were going to repurpose on the edge of the park were within 100 feet of new homes and existing homes, and so the noise level that pickleball generates at that distance violates the noise ordinance. So we did have to put a hold on that. We are definitely looking at additional sites within the park to maybe add some pickleball courts, but at this time we're going to finish the project for the playground, rebuild the tennis courts that we are working on now, work on the maintenance shop, get that done. The boathouse needs to be done. So pickleball in this location will hold off and be probably a little later. We are looking at other locations we have started a pickleball advisory group with quite a few pickleball enthusiasts and some others. And we are looking at viable sites around the city that actually will provide pickleballers the space that they need to play pickleball without, without the conflicts that are caused by either the noise or other uses in the park. So we are looking at that closely.
Thank you, Scott, for helping answer that, and thank you for being here.
No problem.
So I'm looking through the chat. Someone asked about fencing around the gun club. The whole gun club Southwest area will have a visioning process. So yes, that is very likely that we will do some screening of the maintenance activities there. Your input will be gathered for that project. We will involve, there will be an entire public outreach process for that. Same thing with the boathouse. There will be many touch points for public engagement on that project as well.
I want to acknowledge the councilwoman and all her hard work of securing the funding through the bond, and then the voters for voting on the dollars to, excuse me, sorry about that, to actually provide funding to build a satellite maintenance shop, to actually move our maintenance team out of the boathouse into the gun club and actually improve that site so it is not an eyesore, as I know people feel that way. But we definitely want to improve that area, really make it a nicer area for all, and improve the boathouse for the community.
So there's a few questions in the chat about wildlife and geese. So we will look at balancing wildlife with human activity. There has been a little internal discussion with our ecology team about improving the island habitat for birds. Since the island cannot be accessed by humans, that is a great place for birds to be. And the more we build our native landscapes around the perimeter of the lake, the less geese will want to hang out in that area. Geese don't like tall grass. So native landscapes are a really good way to prevent geese from being in those areas. Scott, I'm going to call on you again. There's a question in the chat that says, are motorboats entirely off the table? I miss the water skiing. Can you help address
At this
that?
time, yes, I knew that question was coming too. So at this time, we will not be having motorboating back on the lake for a variety of reasons. It's a very intensive management practice, having to take permits, register the boats for this specific lake. We do not have the resources to put toward that. Also, the lake is incredibly shallow. Motorboats really stir up the sediment and actually cut down on the oxygen levels that are in the lake. So I know some people would say, well, the motor spins and it creates bubbles and oxygen. Well, the sediment actually really works against that. So and the lake is incredibly shallow all throughout the lake. The lake has been in the past. There was an effort to try to dredge it to make it deeper for those types of activities, and it did not work well at all. So we are really moving toward supporting our outdoor adventure plan and providing, making SLOAN'S Lake, really trying to improve the environmental health of the lake for outdoor adventure activities that people can launch, hand activities. I think the suggestion for additional put-ins for hand launched equipment will be something that we really need to take a look at, providing a lot of those areas for people to launch places, improving the water quality and the habitat for fish species. I know there's been lots of questions about wildlife species. You improve the health of the lake, you improve the lake enough so you can have a wide variety and a great diversity of fish species and aquatic species, and more different types of wildlife birds, different types of bird species will start to really visit the lake. As people mentioned, you have the pelicans, we've had osprey there, we've had eagles there, we've had all kinds of bird species. So really excited about this process.
Thank you again, Scott. In the chat, someone's asking about the north side fields north of the lake that are currently used for sports. These will not be discontinued. We are not going to do landscape transformations of any athletic fields. So when I say landscape conversions for around the perimeter of the lake, it won't impact any recreational fields. Someone asked, how deep is the water currently? So Sydney or Jeremy, if you're on the call, could you help address how deep the lake is?
Yeah, hi Jessica, this is Sydney. I'll jump in. So the lake pre-sediment averages around 6 foot depth, with some areas getting as deep as 10 foot. But currently with the sedimentation, we're looking at an average depth around 3.5 feet across the lake.
So even if we took all the sediment out of the lake would still only be 10-foot max in a pretty localized area. The lake is on average about that's 3 to 6 feet deep if we removed all of the sediment.
Yes.
I want to mention too, it's Scott again. Dredging isn't totally off the lake, off the table. Dredging of this lake though would be a massive undertaking. And as Jessica showed the map, this is a large lake that is taking on stormwater from a lot of different municipalities. So we really definitely need to, if we're going to move forward with dredging, which is a possibility of looking forward in the future, it would have to probably be a bond issue. It would need a very significant influx of funding to do this, but we would also need to take into account the other municipalities that are adjacent to us, and also working with Mile High Flood Control District and the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. And it would just be a very large project. So it would be something that would take, this could be the start of that process, but we need to do all the environmental analysis and all the homework to make sure that if we dredge this lake, we do it right. The last time it was tried, it was an utter failure. I just will say that. And so we do want to make sure that if we move forward, that we are going to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we do it right, and it really enhances the Sloan's Lake environment.
Yes, that is a great segue. As I mentioned, the team will start developing 3 concept alternatives. So there will be a spectrum of sort of high, medium, low impacts to the lake. Dredging will be one of those options because I think it is important to look at that cost and balance, do the cost benefit analysis of, is it worth dredging the entire lake? Could we make significant improvements by doing partial dredging or other restoration alternatives? So we will definitely look at dredging, but it's not the only option at this point in the visioning process.
I see there's a couple questions. It's Scott again. There's some questions about plastics and air pollution and loss of open space related to development in the city, heat island effect. Those are all critical issues. We all know those issues are coming. We have climate, we have some major climate change coming. We as a Parks Department are doing everything we can to increase the urban canopy of this city in a very responsible manner. What's happening is we live in a semi-arid desert. We can't just plant trees anywhere, because if we just plant trees and no one's taking care of them and they're not provided the support that they need, those trees are just going to die. It's a waste of resources. So we are going to work and try to plant the right trees as climate change is happening. We need to switch the type of trees that we're planting in the city to more drought tolerant trees. So we are working on that as we speak. On the plastic pollution and the air pollution, there is not much as a Parks Department that we can really do to address plastics and air pollution within our city. We can encourage, we can continue working with Dottie to get people on bikes and improve our trail systems. And we can do those types of things. On the lake side, we can actually look at how we can improve the stormwater areas that are flowing into the lake to possibly catch some of these pollutions and different types of things like that. But we are very limited at what we can do on a citywide basis, because we manage the parks and the space within the parks, and we don't really go outside those spaces. So we will continue to do the things that we're doing and we're pretty good at. and hopefully we can work with others to improve some of these other things and help where we can.
Thank
I
you,
can keep
Scott.
answering some questions, Jessica. Somebody Brian B just asked about leash laws. Actually, at this point, we have just so you know, our park ranger program has been expanded quite a bit. We, 12 years ago when I took this role, we had 2 park rangers. Today, I'm proud to say we have over 50 park rangers. We have limited resources to support them because of COVID and some other things. We have limited vehicles, but we do have rangers that are in the park quite a bit. Dogs off leash is our biggest complaint in the city and county of Denver. We have issued more tickets this year in the city than we've issued all of last year. So I want you to know that if there are specific areas of the parks that you see, you can email Parks and Rec, and the rangers will pick that up. Jessica might be able to provide you a more specific. I didn't know I was going to get that question. We do have a ranger number where you can call, and they will deploy a ranger to try to definitely hold people accountable for having their dogs off leash. Just understand, when people have their dogs off leash, our biggest challenge is trying to come and give them citations. They take off running and they're gone, and our rangers are not going to chase people down. So we will do some of the best things that we can and to try to address some of those issues. And I see some of the other questions coming up. If you see a vehicle parking illegally in the park, or a city vehicle parking somewhere and running in a no parking zone or leaving their engines running, do me a favor. And if you want to, you can actually just take a picture of that vehicle. The vehicles have numbers on them. We know who drives each vehicle and where it's at. We can actually track vehicles. We are following vehicles. We have a program installed on every city vehicle that actually tracks where it's going. If it's idling, all that information is being gathered, so we can track that, and we can actually address those issues through that tracking system. So if you do see that, please take a picture of that vehicle, get the number, and email it to Parks and Rec, the Parks and Rec email box, and we can address that. And Ann Stanwyck said, get Rangers e-bikes. We do have a fleet of about 15 e-bikes that the Rangers are using. So we are trying our best to be as sustainable as possible, but it's incredibly hard for our Rangers to Sloan's Lake is an incredibly large lake, but actually the rangers that work at Sloan's also patrol the parks that are in the vicinity. So we do have an incredibly large park system, 280 parks in the urban area. And that area that is growing as we acquire additional park space, and 7,000 acres. So it's a lot to cover. So just wanted everyone to know that.
I'm going to drop our general Parks and Rec email address in the chat for anyone.
I want to thank Carol. I know Carol Woodall's on here. I know she's with the Geese Protection Group, and I do want to personally thank her. I know we definitely had some good conversations, and I want to stress that, you know, even when everybody doesn't agree always on certain issues, that we can find some common ground. And the Colorado Geese Protection Group has been a huge volunteer group that has collected a lot, as you can see by her comments. They have collected a lot of debris and trash throughout our park system, not just in specific areas, but throughout our park system. And I think one of the things that have been really important is that they collect a lot of fishing line that has been discarded on our shores, which actually is probably the worst thing in the world for wildlife around lakes, and they have just been a great partner. And so I wanted to personally thank her and her group for all the work that they have done.
So Basha, am I pronouncing your name right, is speaking in the chat about the Sloan's Lake Park Foundation. So Denver Parks and the Sloan's Lake Park Foundation have a letter of partnership. So I have been talking monthly with a few members of that team to make sure we're coordinating our messaging. Kurt, who is also on the call, is helping put out a community mailer about phosphorus and fertilizers, picking up dog poop, picking up trash, making sure the community is doing their part to ensure the health of Sloan's Lake. As Scott alluded to, Denver Parks can't solve the problem of Sloan's Lake alone. It takes this entire community. I talked about the watershed approach. Everyone in this watershed impacts our lake.
If I just pipe in for one sec. I think it's a great presentation, and it just struck me when I was looking at it and the amount of detail and work that I know you guys are putting into it. It was like, God, I wish we were just doing this, walking around the lake looking. So, I think that there is kind of a piece of the community that is so fascinated, and they're the people that are going out and doing the lake cleanups and all of those kinds of things. So, over my years of covering city council and being involved with Denver Parks and Rec in a lot of different ways, I feel like there's a lot of community meetings where we get a lot of information and data, and you put polka dots on what you like. But I think that there's kind of a genuine interest within this North Denver community about learning something. So I think you're doing all the right things. I think Sloan's Lake Park Foundation is trying to do all the right things. And I just think anything we can do collectively to maybe create some kind of momentum or community education programs, and just walking around the lake. Like, I learn something every time I walk around the lake, and I know nothing, and I'm supposed to be on the board of this thing. I mean, I try to know a lot, but I've read the 2002 master plan, so it's kind of shocking. Like, and having grown up on Sloan's Lake since the 60s, it's like it's a lot for to process, especially for new people that are coming in and they just see a nice lake and they don't realize what's under the belly of it.
Very great points. Yes. I'm planning for our second community meeting where we'll talk about our concept alternatives to be in person at the park. I agree. I think there's a lot of value for being at the park and talking through things in real life. I'd welcome anyone to reach out to me who wants to give feedback. I'll drop my email in the chat. We can take a walk around the lake and talk about your thoughts. I do have a walk scheduled with the Sloan's Lake Park Foundation. So Basha, talk to Kurt and see if you can get yourself on that site visit we have planned.
That would be awesome. I'd love that. Thank you. And thank you, Amanda, for being such a huge advocate. And Scott, it's all been awesome.
No, thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I saw Brian's comment about the marketing and outreach. We would love to have more people at these meetings. We'll continue this is the start. And so now that everyone who has joined today, like Councilwoman Sandoval said, tell 5 people and they'll tell 5 people. And next meeting, we could have 100 people. This is a very critical issue. Sloan's Lake is our largest body of water in the city and county of Denver, and we need to take care of it. And it's a treasure to the city and the views, and just it's a beautiful, beautiful space. So hopefully the community is seeing the efforts that we're putting in to improve the park. But this is a big part. This is a huge part of the success of Sloan's Lake Park is the lake. We wouldn't have Sloan's Lake Park without the lake. So this is an incredible effort, and really want to work with the community to make this a huge success. And I'm gonna have to drop off, but thank you, Jessica, for everything you've done. And if you need anything from me, please let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Well, we are just about at time. I'm happy to stay on and answer a few more questions if anyone has them. sounds like there's a big interest in volunteering. So reach out to Sloan's Lake Park Foundation, reach out to Denver Park Trust, reach out to the Denver Parks Volunteer Coordinator. There's lots of work you can help us do. Denver Parks has a large staff, but we can't do everything all by ourselves. So if you're interested in volunteering, let us know. I did drop my email address in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me directly. I would love to talk to any of you. Carol? Go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me, Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This has been really informative. Thank you so much for all of the work that you and others have been doing. But I was just wondering from the standpoint, so you know that our group has really become very much involved in terms of cleaning our water, the waterways, and, you know, putting on chest high waders and getting into the waters. And so, but we are sort of curious if you have thought about or would like or would possibly sort of consider sort of this impact between plastic pollution and algae blooms, because that is something that does impact not only Sloan's Lake, but some of our other lakes within our systems, to include like Grassmere Lake typically has an alga bloom, and also what air pollution is actually doing in terms of impacting biodiversity, since there are so many people on this call who are also really interested in the quality of our wildlife and our biodiversity and ecosystems.
Yes, that is a great point. Actually, Jeremy, our consultants ecology team, sent me a text message while he was reading your comments about plastics. So we may follow up with you to hear more and see what we can incorporate into this project scope if it fits. I think you have really great points.
Okay, yeah, I have been keeping track of what we have been collecting from all of our waters, and it's quite horrific.
Yeah, I'd love to see that inventory. That can be one of
Yeah.
our data points that we talk about in this process.
Okay, thank you.
Gina, thank you for dropping the park ranger email in the chat for anyone about your off-leash dog issues or other, park enforcement issues. So thank you for that. I have a comment about the outfall drains are sometimes clogged and not cleaned very frequently, so clogged with debris. That is a great point. Many of these outfalls weren't built for maintenance access, so there is some retrofitting that will need to be done. The large water quality area around the Pelican and the boardwalk area, as you all know, that was recently cleaned. But a lot of our other areas don't have that access available to cleaning. So as we look at improvements around the lake, that will definitely be an objective of making this easier to maintain, making sure trash removal is possible and safe for our employees, adding green infrastructure where it makes sense to help create those wetlands and biofilters. Well, thank you so much for being here. This is everything I had tonight. As I mentioned, our second public meeting is tentatively for July, so I'd love to see you in person at the lake to talk about our concept alternatives.